Christine White in the Beads Incorporated studio. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you are happy to have found my channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button below. You can even tap on the bell to the right of the icon to receive notifications every time one of my new videos comes out. Today we're going to be talking about beaded blooms, or flowers made out of beads. Years ago, we carried a kind of awkward mother of pearl top drilled bead in the store, and it just sat around. Finally, I realized that if I strung 5 or 6 of these together, they would create almost like a water lily shaped flower. And now I realize that I can make a flower out of just about anything. So we're going to talk about a couple of different techniques here where we can use beads to create flowers of our own. Materials that you'll need to create this technique are 6 to 7 top drilled teardrop beads. You can also use an oval shaped bead or a flat round bead, anything that's drilled from end to end. E6000 glue, 1 center bead, several small crystals, head pins, 24 or 26 gauge wire, Scotch tape, and assorted jewelry making pliers. If your beads are top drilled, like my purple beads are here, we're going to cut about 2.5 to 3 feet of your 24 or 26 gauge wire. And you guys know how I feel about wire. I always like to have too much than not enough. So we'll go ahead and string 5 to 6 of our teardrops onto our wire. And we're gonna let these fall all the way down to the center of the wire. Make sure that everything's facing the right direction if for some reason your beads have a front or a back. And then just tie the wire into a tight knot there. And you can kind of see where your flower is starting to come together, pardon me. So we have 2 little tails here on our wire, and we're going to find the center of our flower again, right here. Choose one of these wire tails, and that's going to be our piece of wire that's going to go around the whole flower, kind of bracing the back of the flower and holding everything in place. So I'm going to take this piece of wire and go behind a petal and through the center. And then I'm going to go behind the next petal and through the center. And behind the next petal and through the center, always pulling it tight back down through the center of our flower. And I'll show you what this does in just a second and why it's important to the overall flower. All right, so I've made my way all the way around the flower, and as you can see, it kind of gives the flower a little bit of added support on the back side. So that's the back of our flower, and this is the front. I'm gonna give those 2 wires a little bit of a twist just to kind of complete that step, and then choose one of my tails again to go back up through the center. Pop this one through the center of my flower. And now I'm going to add kind of the fun centerpiece. But we have to add the round crystal part before we add the actual larger round bead in the center. And I've seen people get really creative with how they build the stamens in their flower. You can do like a cluster of beads. You can cluster some head pins so you have a lot of texture and movement there. I'm stringing approximately 14 small crystals to go around my 10mm bead, but there's no real mathematical formula for this. You'll just kind of have to play with it. Once I get all of these on here, I'm going to make a loop out of the little crystal section there. Give it a little twist, and then lay it flat against the center of our flower. You can kind of see that starting to take shape as well. And bring this piece of wire down and around the back side. I'm going to add my center bead and make sure that when I pull this center tight, that the holes on either side of my center bead are not visible, just meaning that the bead is kind of sitting right there, east to west. And so I have these two pieces of wire still on the back of my flower. I'm going to twist these about 1/2 inch or so on the back. Get a nice good twist there. And then I'm ready to just snip off all of the excess wire here. Coil this up inside of the flower to make sure that it's nice and smooth on the back. And next I'm ready to add whatever my backing is going to be, so that this can become a part of jewelry, become a pendant, whatever you want it to be. I'm going to use some E6000 glue. So it's a silicone-based epoxy, and I really want to get a good blob of E6000 in here. Really let it fill up the center of our flower, and then take that extra teardrop and just set it on the back center of our flower. I like to apply some Scotch tape because this glue is not as fast drying as some of our other glues that we work with, and that'll just hold it in place while the glue dries. It'll take about 45 minutes to an hour to dry, and then you can work with it and incorporate it into a necklace or bracelet, however you'd like. So let's next look at how we can create a flower when our beads are not top drilled and we need to add them to a head pin. So if your beads are not top drilled and we need to add them to head pins, you can go ahead and do that now. I've added 3 of my beads to a head pin, and I've reserved a 4th that actually is going to have a wrapped loop on both sides. That's going to allow me to easily make it into a pendant. And then my 5th I've put aside, and it's not going to have a head pin at all. It's going to serve as my backing. So I'm going to go ahead and add these 4 beads to my wire. It's the same thing. It's about 2.5 feet long or so. String them all on in the order that I want them. Pay careful attention to that because you don't want to get them out of order. Tie a tight knot in our wire there at the very center, and then lay out the order of our quatrefoils, which is what I'm using, or your ovals again. And then we really want to pinch the center of that flower and begin to really spider web all of these different wires around the head pins and beads that we have wrapped together. So this is going to create a lot of support within the flower until it gets nice and rigid. Kind of switching hands, switching wires, going back and forth until we get the firmness here that we're looking for. Make sure it's nice and even. Okay, so as you can see, my flower, it's kind of a different looking flower. It has the quatrefoils and it has 4 petals, but I wanted to give it kind of an updated look. It's starting to take shape here, and I am ready to add my crystal center. So it's gonna have the same style center that the other flower had, and I'm ready to start stringing my 14 crystals or so onto one of my wire tails. These have really tiny holes, but they make such a pretty effect when you have them there. Get all of these on there. Couple more, and then we're going to go ahead and make that loop out of the crystals. So loop those around, and you can pull up your crystals and just kind of twist them at the base. And that'll make a little circle out of the Swarovski crystals. Lay that flat against the center of the flower. Pull this little wire piece down and through. Back up like that. And I'm just gonna add that crystal the same way that we did on the first flower. Stringing this back through the center of the flower, and it really just kind of pulls everything together. So now you see the back side of my flower. We're ready to do that same twisting action to really seal the flower closed. Twist tie about 1/2 inch or so. Cut off my extra. And then I'm just gonna use a round nose plier. You could also use a flat nose plier to just curl that up inside the back of the flower. So there's the front of my flower and the back of my flower. Again, I'm going to use my E6000. Put a good blob of E6000 on the back side to cover up that wiry mess, make it smooth to the touch, and apply one more of those beads on this back side. Use my Scotch tape to hold this quatrefoil or bead of your choice in place while it dries. And when that's dry, we'll be ready to incorporate it into some jewelry. So thank you so much for joining me today in the Beads Incorporated studio. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button below. Let me know your feedback in the comment section, and be sure to check out all of my other jewelry making tutorials.